Welcome everybody to Spirituality Adventures. This is a non-judgmental place to explore spirituality, and we're so glad you're here. This is a viewer and listener supported podcast, so we greatly appreciate your support. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Be sure and like, share, and subscribe to any of the social media content platforms that you're using. And then if you go to our website, spiritualityadventures.com, you can make a one-time donation, or with a monthly subscription, you'll gain access to our bonus content. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you for tuning in. Welcome everybody to Spirituality Adventures. We're glad you joined us, and I'm excited to have Jaron Myers here with us today.
Yeah.
Jaron, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Jaron is a professional comedian, and I think only the second professional comedian that I have interviewed on Spirituality Adventures, the first being a friend of yours, Aaron Scarborough.
Yep.
So
who is also just a wonderful person, but even other than comedian, very talented artist just in general.
Right.
Insane.
I want to get some of his art for my space because he posts it, and I like what he's doing.
Yeah. I will always talk up Aaron. He's wonderful.
Yeah. So, and then I just want to say this, your social media presence is huge. You have it right there on your website.
Yeah.
How many millions of people are. That's probably me.
Oh, that is an iPad.
And it's ringing. I've got my phone off, but it's ringing on my iPad. I forgot to turn my iPad off.
I was worried that was me for a second.
Yeah. I forgot to put it on.
It's on Do Not Disturb, though.
Oh, well.
Weird.
Yeah, I'm not
just
sure
mute
why.
It. Here, mute the iPad, though, in case it happens again. That's okay. You were doing the right thing. No, go back to what you were doing. Do you not have Apple stuff?
I do.
Nice, there you go.
I thought there was a mute switch.
Yeah, that'll do it. Yeah, include this whole thing in here, by the way.
Exactly.
Yeah, I really want, me talking down to Matt in there. Like, what are you, an idiot?
Don't you know what you're doing, dude?
You're using an iPad before?
Come on.
This is an iPad.
This company called Apple, and
yeah. They have a great show called Severance.
All right. So your social media presence.
Yes. Yeah.
Quite impressive.
Thank you.
I'm thinking of all the people I've interviewed, you're killing it.
Thank you. Yeah. I've been working really hard. Yeah.
Like a social media rock star.
Thank you. Yeah. It's something that it's, once you kind of realize it's a game, and there's strategies that work and don't work, it's super fun.
Yeah, I need coaching really badly.
Well, and that's the thing is that I'll coach you, and then you'll do that, and then Instagram will change it.
Yeah, well, that's
and
true.
So for me, part of the game that I've enjoyed is doing the figuring out what's going to work this week and then that's just trial and error and failing a lot and messing up. But
yeah, you're so What was one of the first things that put you on the social media map? What was one of your first things that went viral?
There was, the Chick-fil-A video is probably my top. So it's a Chick-fil-A rap I did.
I watched
music video. Did you watch it?
It's fun.
Yeah.
Oh,
we set a real car on fire. I was like, there's no way this doesn't go viral. And that was 2017.
Tell people how to watch this. 2017.
If you Google Chick-fil-A rap, it's the top thing that pops up.
Okay.
And so, it is a music video I did. And
did you write that whole thing?
So I am a very big proponent of do what you're good at, and then what you're not good at, find someone who is. And so I am a white kid from the Midwest who I'm not great at rap. And so but I got a friend who's so talented. And so I was like, hey, here's this idea I've got. Here's kind of a verse structure I've got. Can you help me make this worthy of music? I didn't want to make rap and it be like, ugh, okay. So I had my buddy who's a real professional rapper help me write this. And we sat in his house and he made the beat. And then he looked at my lyrics and was like, this is dumb. But he kind of like reworded it so that it flowed really well.
Yeah.
And then so he helped me write it. His name is JJ. He goes by Joseph, $J$PH.
Okay.
His music's phenomenal. So that's a plug for him.
Yeah.
He lives in Dallas now.
I need to get him. Oh, he's in Dallas.
I know, but he'll come up here and do it. Yeah, he's great. He and his wife have an amazing story. Cool. But so he helped me write that, and so I wanted to make sure it was good music, and I wanted to make sure it was a good video. I didn't want to do anything cheesy. I didn't want to like, there's been some things where we make and we just don't put it out. I go, that's not good. I don't want to put it out.
So did you have to get permission from Chick-fil-A?
Well, we should have. Yeah, we should have done that. So with the Chick-fil-A we filmed it at, the operator should have asked his directors, and they probably would have said no. But he said yeah. And so we asked on our end. We said, hey, is this okay? Is this okay to do? Here's the lyrics. Here's the song. Here's the video. Are we good to go? Right. So we did our due diligence, which meant that they couldn't sue us. And so then a couple of days after it comes out, I got a call from an Atlanta number that I did not know.
Yeah.
And she was like, hi, my name is Kristen with Chick-fil-A PR. Just curious where you filmed this. And I remember telling her, I said, you're calling me on my private cell phone number. I said, I think you know. And I'm going to call you back in like 10 minutes. And she was like, okay. And I called my lawyer friend. And I said, am I in trouble?
That's hilarious.
And, and even the operator of the store was like, they're overreacting to this. This is annoying.
Did it go viral? Like
immediately, which was not really the plan. My goal was to get 1 million views in this thing, and we hit that within like 8 hours of it being up. It was ridiculous, and that was 2017. That was like, it was. And
it was on YouTube.
I put it on YouTube.
Is that where it went viral?
Facebook's where it really went viral. Okay. Yeah, that was when Facebook was kind of dominating the video game.
Okay.
And it got great views on YouTube, but then another page shared it. So even if Chick-fil-A was like, you need to delete this, like even if I deleted it, that other page would share. Yeah, it's already out there. Their share of it got 36 million views. So now, 5 years later, and I've posted it on TikTok and all that stuff. Altogether, that video alone has like 120 million views on it.
That's so insane.
Which is, that's a Super Bowl.
That's crazy.
And so that's crazy to me. Yeah. And so that was 2017. And I had been doing comedy for about 3 years, but that really kind of launched into a different season of that,
Yeah. So let's back up a little bit, because that gives folks who don't know you, that at least gives them a little teaser,
Yeah.
But I always like to get a little bit of your origin story and where were you born, growing up, family stuff, some of just your family background and maybe your faith background, things like that.
Sure. Well, I grew up in.
We're going to jump back into the
into that world. How that grew into this. For sure. Yeah. I grew up in Mount Vernon, Missouri, small town. Really proud of where I'm from. I like it a lot. My mom went to high school there and she graduated, and so she was a single mom. Had me when she was 22, which is crazy. Because I'm 28, which would mean I would have a 6-year-old right now. That's bonkers to me. And so she and my dad got married when I was 6. They got married about my age, and we stayed in Mount Vernon. It's a town where everybody knows everybody. I grew up going to the elementary school, and the teachers were her friends from high school. And so everyone really did know everybody, and. So when I was in 4th grade, I think, they joined with another family and started a really small church. And when I say like really small, I mean like 28 people.
Wow. Did you have siblings?
I had one other one. Yeah. So my parents got married when I was 6. They had my brother when I was 7.
Okay.
And so it's just me and him. And so, but that's a 7-year age difference,
Yeah.
And so that's
my youngest sister is 7 years younger than me.
It's a gap.
Yeah, it is.
And it's kind of
when
like
you're in elementary, junior high school.
Yes. When I'm in,
now it's nothing, but
now we're cool, and he's great. I love him a lot. But we just didn't have the, he lived his high school years as a single kid, so, and I lived my elementary, I grew up in my formative years as a only child. Yeah. And so we just, there was some things that didn't really, I wish that we were closer, but Yeah.
Were you into sports or into any
I played
kind of
baseball,
extracurricular kind of stuff?
Yeah, I did that when I got into high school. I didn't do sports as much. I was a drama kid.
Okay.
So I did drama, and which is great because that's what I do for a living now. And then I was a choir kid as well. I was in band. I did all the arts stuff. So really excelled, and that's what all my scholarships were, is music scholarships. So.
What was your family faith background, if anything?
Yeah, I was going to say, so when I was in fourth grade, they started that small church. I went, my grandma was kind of the, pick me up on Sunday morning and take me to her old Baptist church that she played piano at for 30 years kind of thing. And my parents didn't really go until, I was about fourth grade. And, when I say there was 28 people at that church, I mean like half of it was the pastor's family, like his kids and then their kids. And so it was really that whole family, and then our family, and then like one or two other families. And so we did that through my sophomore year of high school. So fourth grade, all of middle school, we were part of that church. And it was a good church. It was a very family oriented, we were always at their house kind of church, but my parents weren't really, I think the way that my mom would describe it now is she's very much like, they tried to do the church thing. Like dad's the leader of the household, and even though they weren't really faith oriented people, and they weren't doing any private study on their own, prayer wasn't a part of our family's life, but church was very much part of our family's life. So we would go to church, but then outside of that, we weren't really.
Not like you were digging into the Bible and figuring out theology and all that kind of stuff.
And I would say even when I got into high school, like I got really into faith because I got invited to a youth group that I felt like I really connected with. And so I was digging into my faith, and through high school, and then I even went to a Christian college. And my parents would say this, like in high school, I kind of became like the spiritual charge of our house. It was like, hey, I'm really interested. I'm asking questions that they were like,
Yeah.
And so I think that they kind of started to do some private study and they're just, not to speak for my parents, we've done a lot of work as a family. But I think that both of my parents were people who were very much just like the stuff it inside and make it look good on the outside kind of stuff, which is what I mean. Like they did the Dave Ramsey stuff when I was in middle school. They did the stuff that was their church, really kind of expected them to do. And when I was a sophomore in high school, we didn't have a youth group at my small family church. It was me and that other kid that I grew up with. And so when I got invited to a different youth group, they needed a drummer. And I was like, I can drum, And so I went to that youth group, and that was one where I think the youth pastor, even though he made some of the cliche youth pastor mistakes, like they did a Hell's Bells series, like don't listen to secular music, those kind of like
backmasking and
he got saved. My youth pastor got saved at a 90s crusade kind of, and so he had like a very dramatic 180 story.
I got rid of all my best rock albums.
Did you?
Point in my
That's what
life,
I'm saying. Yeah,
and now I wish I had them all back.
Right. I know. Like, oh dang it, I can't unburn those.
Like I had that, and I had that, and I had that.
For real, it was even though he had those kind of moments as a youth pastor, like a little bit of like because he really did the 180 kind of thing, and his story was very dramatic. I think that he just genuinely wanted to see students thrive,
Yeah.
And so he our youth group grew like crazy. And that was one where I really made friends, and we did the weird overzealous Midwest Christian kid thing where we're like, we're going to save our whole town, and got really into that whole thing. And so there was some clunky discipleship, as I would call it, where, you go from being like, yeah, I go to church, to all of a sudden being like, my whole life revolves around it, and I'm gonna, which not a bad thing, but I think it just kind of went from one extreme to another.
Yeah.
And so that was high school. I went to Evangel University Christian School
in Springfield. Yeah. Which
Yeah.
is kind of a flagship
AG school.
Assembly of God school. Yeah.
I grew up Baptist.
Right.
So then I go to an AG school where they're rolling around on the floor with no shoes on. And so it was an adjustment.
Still good education.
Great school.
Good
Loved
sport
it.
programs. You know.
It was a good
I know
college
a
experience.
lot of kids who have gone there.
Yeah. I would suggest it. I would suggest it. I would suggest it the same way that I suggest any college, though. Now I tell students, like, hey, because I talk to a lot of young kids, and I say, if you don't know what you're going for, don't do that, you know? Or if you're going to go to school, the biggest thing I wish I knew was no one taught me time management. No one, when I was growing up, no one taught me time management skills. And so when I got into college, I'm trying to hang out with all these friends and do the campus life stuff. And then I was like staying up till 3 a.m. writing a paper, but you know, cause no one taught me if you commit this 45 minutes to this task, it'll get done, you know? But instead I spent 4 hours talking with friends and then writing the paper in between, doing the whole, so I wasn't a good student. I flunked out of school, which was fine. Well, and you don't flunk out of Evangel, just so you know. You can't flunk out of a Christian college. Your admissions counselor sits down and
just
goes,
keep paying the bill and they let you stay, right?
Well, they say, they go, you should pray about what God has for you. Right. And that's their way of being like, I don't know if this is it, like we've been praying for you and we think that you should take a couple semesters off. And so,
your mom's the only person on the planet that thinks you're a good student.
Yeah. Well, and even she didn't, she had the conversation. I got home and they were like, that was kind of the pivotal thing that got me into what I'm doing is.
So let's talk that.
Sure.
Like what? Yeah. So you literally flush out of Evangel.
Yeah, I really did. So I wasn't a great student. I also had a lot of life kind of things. When I'm talking about that overzealous kind of faith thing, it was really much a do the right things, be the right kind of Christian guy, highlight the Bible, tweet the Bible verses, be the good Christian kid on campus. I didn't drink, didn't cuss, didn't smoke, did all the right stuff, but I didn't have a mature faith that would prepare me for, when you're 21 and you go through that breakup with the girl you thought you were going to marry, because you're 21 and a Christian and you're just like, yeah, that's what I'm supposed to do. And you go through this breakup and you don't have friends who are wise enough to help counsel you through things, and you didn't, and my family, my parents were, because they were such stuff it down people, we didn't have good communication. So when I was flunking out of college, going through a really bad breakup where she then started dating my best friend, so I didn't have, and so it's one of those things where it's like, I don't have a good relationship with my parents, so there was no one to talk to, and kind of, and my faith was very I had the kind of faith that worked when life was working well. Right. Which, and I would say a lot of people had that as well when the pandemic happened. A lot of people had a faith that works really well when everything's going smooth. And then something like the pandemic happens where life is not smooth anymore. And the faith that they were holding on to didn't hold up. Right. And so that's where I found myself in college. And so, I took a semester off to kind of find myself, figure out what I was doing. Right. And I was on staff at a great church at the time, North Point Church in Springfield. Still a church I would say is my home church. And Jeremy Johnson, phenomenal pastor. But I was on staff there. So I was doing the youth worship, and I told all my friends from Evangel, I said, hey, I'll come lead worship at your church on a weekend. Tell your pastors I'll do that. I was working at Subway, making sandwiches, leading worship on a Wednesday night, getting paid, I think it was $200 a week from the church, and then Subway paid, I don't know, $9 an hour. Right. And so, a pastor in Kansas City at the time called me and said, hey, we have a Valentine's banquet and we heard you do some funny songs. Cause for the talent show at Evangel, I did a couple Found My Girl on Craigslist, kind of just silly songs. Yeah. And I said, well, yeah, I've got 3 or 4 of those. And he said, well, we just need somebody to do some stuff during dinner for our Valentine's night. Can you come do that for $200 in a hotel room? And I was like, yeah, I can do that. So my first comedy show was a paid gig. Wow. And it was here in Kansas City. It was. So before you started doing that, in that period where you left Evangel, was there, just maybe take a minute or two and talk, was there some fairly deep issues that went on inside you Yeah. That was
And
definitely
is that something you share from time to time?
It is. Yeah. So 2013, when I flunked out of
Some
college,
dark days.
was what I mean, like when I say like that faith did not prepare me, right? I really felt like I just didn't have a lot to fall back on. But I also felt like I grew up in the Bible Belt. There's a great expectation that if you, I don't want to generalize the Bible Belt, but I will say a lot of the faith that I learned was very transactional with God, was do the right things, get the right things. And so I'm doing all the right things, but I'm still getting broken up with and flunking out of college and, things that were still mostly my fault. It was an unhealthy relationship and I should have set healthier boundaries and I didn't. I should have been a better time management and been a better student, but I wasn't. But in my mind, I'm like, God's punishing me, and that led to, but also I moved back into my parents' basement in a town of 2,000 people where everyone knew what happened. I said I grew up where everyone knows each other, and it was really embarrassing, really, really embarrassing to then be the kid that I was the youth worship leader. I was supposed to go do big things for God or whatever. And, you get sent off by your home church and they're like, you're going to go to college and you're going to change this world for God and all this stuff. And then to flunk out and move back into my parents' basement working at Subway was embarrassing for that, for sure. And so there were definitely times where I don't know that I questioned, God, I guess. I just kind of questioned like what am I supposed to be doing? Like if that wasn't it, because I thought I was doing the right stuff. If that's not it, then what does work? Like what I didn't realize at the time, and my parents didn't realize either. We've since done all this work together. But like I wasn't vulnerable with anybody, and I was almost using God as a way to, I pray to God and I talk to God, so therefore I don't have to actually be close to anybody else. So in any relationship I have with somebody else, I've got to be caring for them and I can't really allow them to care for me. And so that's my role, is to, how can I pray for you? Like, how can I, don't worry about it. I'm fine, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And in doing that, I was kind of insulating myself. So that way, when things were falling apart, I also couldn't admit that I struggled with anything. Struggling meant that you were far from God, no one explicitly says that either. No one, not like my pastor when I was in high school was like, if you're struggling, you're far from God. But he was basically saying like, if you feel far from God, then it's because you're the one who moved.
Right.
That kind of stuff that kind of hits different of like God is far from me because I'm far from God. And I can't admit that to anybody.
Yeah.
And so, there's a lot of shame, a lot of embarrassment in that time.
Man, I can relate, except I waited till I was 57 or 58 to go through that kind of experience extremely publicly. So super big shame, super big embarrassment. Really felt like feelings, I was not mentally committed to being an atheist, but felt like
what the heck?
Everything I'd ever taught, believed, felt like it was just gone.
Yeah.
And so, so I went through something like that way late. I came to Christ when I was 16, preached my first sermon when I was 16 or 17.
Right.
And I was actually a kid into the rec drug scene for a couple, 2 or 3 years. And then I left my sophomore year.
So you had like a 180 turn kind of thing.
I came back my junior year and started Fellowship of Christian Athletes at my high school.
Right. Right.
Just right around the corner from us here, Park Hill High School. So,
okay. Yeah.
But at any rate, so I can relate to that from after having walked as a pastor for 40 years and then all of a sudden went through something like what you went through when you were 21.
Right.
Yeah. So it's so interesting how different crises can hit us at different life places and intersections and stuff like that.
And my dad had a car accident in 2018, so about, I guess 4 years ago now, and that was something that really shook up our family. We've been in family counseling since I was a sophomore in high school. Like when I switched churches, that was a big thing you know, because my parents were leaving their church and that was their only community, but they didn't really have healthy friendships there. And so that's what I mean. Like when I felt like I was the spiritual charge, is I started going to this youth group, and then all of a sudden they were like, well, we want to go to the same church as our son. And so, but yeah, in 2018, my dad got in a car accident. He's fine now. He's just recovered like nothing's ever happened, because he's like a machine of a person. But that was a big, you know, like I say again, there's a lot of faith that works when things are going well, and then all of a sudden his livelihood is gone, and he's in the hospital, and it's going to be months of recovery. The faith that we carried as a family didn't work, and the understanding we had, the relationships we had with each other, didn't work for that context. And so I would never say, I'm never one of those people that's like, wow, I'm glad that you went through that, or I'm glad I went through that. You know, we can't on the other side go, oh, that needed to happen.
Yeah. Or we learned, or we grew, or whatever.
Yeah. And those are, I don't even know if that needed to happen. That's not what I mean by that. What needed to happen was I needed to know the things I know now. And it sucks that it took something like that to get there.
Yeah.
But then if I can take what I'm learning now and I can, you know.
Yeah, you bet. Right. So you went through a pretty dark place, and yet you come out of that doing your first paid comedy gig.
Yeah.
And did that start the ball rolling?
Kind of. It really did. Because, I mean, AG is really connected. And so that was Doug Reed down at Inglewood. I don't know if you're familiar with Doug he was down in Independence.
Okay. I don't know him personally, but.
He was a weird guy. Like him. Weird dude. And, but he gave me that first opportunity, you know, it was a couple songs for the Valentine's thing. And then the AG is so well connected. He, without my prompting, just sent an email to a couple different pastors, one guy in St. Louis, a couple other in Kansas City, and was like, hey, Jaron did this stuff for our Valentine's thing. It was great. And I got a call. Maybe I wasn't trying to pursue it. You know, I was fully planning on going back to college, you know? And then I had a call from a pastor in St. Louis who was like, hey, we're doing a big youth event next month. Can you come do those funny songs? You know, we'll pay you $500. And I was like, yeah, I'll come do that, you know? And so I went up there.
Funny songs.
Yeah. And I did the songs. And then, you know, as I kept getting booked for kind of stuff, and they would bring me for their camp, you know? And I kept trying to tell some jokes in between. I was not good. Wasn't good at, you know, I'm figuring out how to do comedy at paid gigs for comedy, which is not a great ideal setup, you know?
Yeah.
But that's what I was doing. I was learning on the job. And that was.
How old were you?
At 2014, I had just turned 20.
Wow.
And so my first gig was I was 19 because it was Valentine's Day. And then my birthday is February 23rd. So I was 19 for my first gig. And then.
So we're in those early days when you're learning, when you're not really that good at it, but you're learning. Were there moments with the audience when it clicked and you were just, this is sweet. I want to lean into this. Did that feel like calling of sorts?
There was a definitive moment. So there was, definitely a couple of things. Like even that first show, like I remember going to my hotel. I got a hotel room that night. And I was in my hotel room, and I was just like, oh, like I had just made the amount of money I make from a full week of work at Subway. And I was like, is this a job? Like, do people do this? And so, you know, obviously I knew people did this, but that's like famous, right? And I was like, do people do this? And there was a kind of this, you know, some wheels turning of like, I don't know if that's possible, but it'd be cool if it was. And then June 12th, 2014. So I don't know, like, what is that? 4 or 5 months later, I was doing a homeless church in San Antonio. There was a San Antonio church that brought me down, again, through those connections. Just somebody emailed and they was like, hey, so I drove down to Texas and they set up a homeless church the night before. And so
what does that mean, a homeless church?
It's a Thursday night gathering they do. It's called Church Under the Bridge in San Antonio.
I've heard of Church Under the Bridge type stuff.
Yeah. So this is a big room. They get like 300 people who show up, and they're there for the free food. They get a free meal.
Right.
But it's a little bit of a, which now I look at it and I don't like the bait and switch kind of things. It's not bait and switch. They know what they're signing up for, but they got to sit through the service and then afterward they get food. Right.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like how they're, you got to sit through this sermon. Right. We bring in a preacher every week and then that, right.
You did comedy at it.
Yeah. And actually the shelter didn't know that was the plan, I guess. Cause the guy was pretty ticked that we did comedy the whole time. Cause I had my best friend with me and about halfway through my stuff, the guy goes, is he going to say anything about Jesus or not? Like it was, and then Tim was like, I don't think that church told him we were comedians.
That's hilarious.
And so, but after that, like I did that thing, people are obviously just there for the food. So like, they're not going to fake laugh with you. They're there. It's air conditioning in June in San Antonio. So it's packed, right? Cause it's an air conditioning room and some of them are sleeping, they're hanging out. And so for the first 10 minutes, it's like, all right. But then you're starting to get a couple chuckles and some people. And by the end, we were rolling. We were having a good time. Right. And there was a lady who came up after and she said, I haven't even smiled in weeks and I really needed that. And it was like that where I got in the car and Tim was like, man, that was really fun. And I was like, yeah, I think this is what I'm going to do. And so I went home, I bought a website. I told my parents I probably wasn't going back to school. I said, would you give me any of that money that you're paying for my school? Would you give me any of that to help me start this? And so they gave me $2,000. I built a website and I bought a clunker van and it's just been off to the races since.
Wow.
So I really committed to it. And I was working at the church the whole time and kind of supplementing income. And even when I first moved to Kansas City, I was Uber driving and just, odd jobs here and there. And then my first year when I was like full-time, like I didn't need to do any other jobs was 2019. And then 2020 happened.
Yeah.
And so,
crap.
So so I mean, I've been full time for a couple of years. I would say I've been full time the whole time. The other things were just side hustles,
right?
Side gigs,
right? Wow. So I'm so curious about all of this. This is fun.
Yeah.
So were your initial gigs almost all churches?
Yeah. So
first few years, mostly, or first year?
Yeah, the first couple months for sure. And then once I committed to doing comedy, then I was like, well, I need to like figure out how to do comedy.
Yeah.
So
I want to hear how you actually started studying comedy as an art form.
Sure.
And what was that process?
So I started watching YouTube videos of, how to write jokes. And the basic way they did that was they were just taking, famous comics, breaking down a joke that they wrote and kind of showing how they structured a joke. And that for me was like, I'm a natural storyteller. I'm very good at, you've been around somebody who's not a good storyteller?
I have.
Yeah. Where I grew
up in a family of storytellers.
There you go. So, okay. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, and you're a good storyteller. So, when you tell a story, you save that juicy part for the end or you build to the conclusion. Like, you give it like all the twists and turns in the middle and then you land somewhere. Right. I hate when people give us the thing where it lands and then they try to do all twists and turns. And it's like, this isn't going anywhere. I know how this ends, right? So I'm already like a good storyteller, right? Just naturally. I think that's because I grew up as an only child or whatever. But using that then to keep an audience attention and then build here, deliver a punchline, that kind of stuff I had to kind of learn how to do. And I think that I'm naturally decent at those things, but there was definitely like a discipline of that. One of the greater disciplines, and this is just a fun little tidbit.
Yeah.
That me and my buddy Tim, who was my best friend, he would travel with me at the beginning, do all those long road trips. We would be in the car and he would give me 2 random topics and I had to do a sentence or 2 to string them together. And that was how because you're trying to create a cohesive show. So if I've got this bit about changing a tire and then I've got this bit about cooking, right? I want to go, we're twisting that tire, the nuts on the wheel, almost like when you're trying to open a jar of mayonnaise, and it's just stuck and you're getting it. And then I can transition into something about food. And so like, how do I get from tires to mayonnaise? Let me do 2 sentences and get there. And then we would just do that for, hours in the car. He just give me. And so, but that's like a little,
it's almost like a little impromptu.
It's a little exercise. Yeah. Yeah. So I started kind of developing things like that.
Yeah.
And then when you're on stage, if you got to get to another joke, that's where a lot of comics, you can tell who's new because they'll go, So anyway, I was doing this the other day, you know, and there's no smooth transition. And that was something I wanted to get really good at. And so.
Cool. I was always, in the 90s, I would always show video clips, little short clips in my sermons, you know. Mm-hmm. And at some point, we started trying to do goofy homemade videos to splice into, you know, boring 30-minute sermons.
Right. Yeah.
Hopefully not boring, but
just doing whatever you could. Yeah.
The biggest sin as a preacher is to bore people. You know,
sure.
So I always tried to keep it.
And there's some that are out there sinning every week. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
They're out there
and
struggle.
So we ended up having a guy land in our church who did improv.
Okay.
There was an improv place down in the River Market in Kansas City, like in the 2000s. Okay. So we'd already been doing some.
Yeah, improv was really big
stuff,
in the 2000s.
But yeah, he knew how to, he had studied comedy. He knew how to like storyboard out funny things. Sketches, video clips, whatever. So So we started doing super cheesy.
Yeah.
Like, you know, just, I can't even think of it, like Fred's Day Off.
Sure.
Just storyboard some stupid crap, or, you know, the church without volunteers.
Well, we did that. We did that at the church I was on. Yeah. We did a bunch of goofy stuff. My pastor did a series on when people are pretending to be something they're not. And it was when the Snickers commercials were really popular. Like, you're not yourself when you're hungry. You know, see those commercials. Yeah. So we did a thing where I had the headset on and walked out. And I was like, hey guys, thanks for joining us at North Point this weekend. My name is Jeremy. I'm the lead pastor here. And I'm obviously some idiot 20-year-old kid up there. And people who go every week, they're laughing. And I show up a picture of his family that I very poorly photoshopped my face over his, you know, and I'm like, that's my beautiful wife, Leanne, and our two kids, Janaea and the other one. And then he's walking out and going, what are you doing? I said, I'm getting ready to preach. And he goes, you're not you know? And he goes, isn't that painful to watch someone get up and try to be somebody they're not, you know? And so then that's what he led into his message. So that's what I mean. Like, Jeremy is a phenomenal pastor. That's my home church, but he was always really good at
it's
those kind of things.
It's fun to watch people who have studied the art of comedy.
Yeah.
And then actually, you know how it works.
Or even just speaking. See a good public speaker, because I do school assemblies and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And I've seen real bad speakers, you know, and they're sticking to their notes. So they're like, you know, people are shaking and they're doing their whole PowerPoint presentation, or whatever. But when you see somebody who, usually it's someone who's very confident about what they're saying, right? Or like the material they're presenting,
right?
Whether that be any kind of spiritual thing, or even if you watch I did a program with the anti-drunk driving stuff for high schoolers, right? And a guy who's like just genuinely passionate about lessening the number of kids who are killed in drunk driving accidents. Mm-hmm. Someone who's like passionate and interested in what they're saying, because you're not going to get anybody interested in something that you're not interested in.
Yeah.
You know, that's where things are weird. That stuff's weird when you're watching somebody who's clearly not passionate about what they're talking about, and they're just going because they're like, this is what I'm supposed to say.
Yeah.
And you're like, this is weird for both of us right now. Right. You know, you don't got to do this.
So who were you were watching YouTube videos on how to break down a joke?
Yeah.
You're probably have your favorite comedians that you probably studied as well, right?
In 2010, there was when I was in high school, this was way before I started doing comedy, or ever dreamed about doing comedy. Mm-hmm. There was an MTV show called Made. You remember that?
No.
Do you know what I'm talking about, man? There was an MTV show where you could
MADE.
MADE.
Okay.
You could, let's say you want to be a bodybuilder, and you submit to the show and you go, I want to be a bodybuilder.
Okay.
Right? It's usually some overweight kid who's just like, I want to feel better about myself, kind of thing. They would pair you with a professional bodybuilder who would come to your school, surprise you, right? And then now for the next 30 days, you are training with them, and and it was like a confidence thing. It was like you have the ability to pursue this dream. Like, if you want to, this is how I did it, and all this kind of thing. You know, there was girls who wanted to be like, who wanted their own makeup lines, and they wanted to get into the beauty stuff. And so they would send a beautician who was like a famous whatever. Yeah. And so they would send these big profile people to make you would be made into whatever that dream was.
Like a makeover kind of thing.
Yeah. And I signed up to be made into a comedian, and I wanted Dane Cook to be the comic who would come, because he was the biggest in 2010. You know, he was doing Vicious Circle and his Madison Square Garden stuff. And so when you watch my stuff, there's definitely a little bit of that energy, that kind of, we tell stories the same way. He uses words like a master, but that same kind of energy and goofiness is what, like, I just thought his comedy was great at the time. He and Brian Regan, and then the videos that I was watching of brilliant writers were people like Louis C.K. and how he wrote jokes. Phenomenal joke writer.
Yes.
But even like things down to like the hand motions that they would use. And those videos were breaking down of like when he uses this soft voice and this hand motion. And I'd be like, oh man. And then even when I started learning from other comics, there's a bit that I do that's all about airdropping dead possums to people. Pictures of.
I just watched it.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah. I was actually just going to bring this up.
Nice. Good.
Yeah.
So. Boop. Yeah. And so, but even like the word boop, you know, because it has a hard P at the end. When I first started doing that bit, it was, I thought raccoon would be a funny word, you know? And so it was pictures of dead raccoons. Well, that is a mouthful to say. And then I changed it to, what did I do after that? A different animal. But possum, the P, was just the funniest, and it was hitting the hardest. And so part of doing comedy is this works, but it could be better. Let me try some different things. You
got to tell the audience, just give them the quick setup on this possum thing.
If you have
you can go to his website and watch it, but
if you've got an iPhone, there's AirDrop on your phone, and you can just send any picture that you want to somebody.
Like you
who
can be
has
sitting in an
AirDrop on.
airport.
Yeah, I was sitting there and just.
You can airdrop something to somebody who doesn't know.
Now you don't do inappropriate pictures, because that's like really rough. Because like kids will be on iPads, you know. You don't need to send that stuff. But like just pictures of possums just playing possum, you know, and just send that, because it pops up and then they freak out and they go, who sent? Because they don't know who sent it, you know. And you can do that. I'm saying I just like to have fun, right? I was at Starbucks the other day and I asked the guy next to me. I said, "Hey, will you watch my backpack?" And he was like, "Yeah." I said, "Thanks." And then I put my headphones back in and just kept working. And then he's just sitting there, and like 30 minutes later, he gets up and he's like, "All right, I'm leaving." And I was like, "Okay." Right. So like, that's what I started doing in my life, just having fun, you know? But that's what I'm saying. Like, part of comedy was I was using a different animal and a different word and just making that one little change.
You remember the picture of the squash dead possum roadkill?
Yeah.
And he's got the orange.
Yeah, the painted over him. Yeah.
Over him. And
I love the pictures of roadkill with the get well soon balloons.
Bad day.
Yeah, that's that's just laziness on the road painter guy, you know? They could have picked that up. That's dumb.
Oh man. Yeah. No,
but that's why I like comedy.
Stuff.
That's why I like speaking. Is just it really is just small changes, and you're figuring it out on the go. Like, you are reading the reaction of a room and trying to figure out what works and what doesn't. And that's a blast. That's fun.
So do you have some classics that you like to bring up over and over again? How
like
do
of
you
my
work?
jokes?
Yeah, because like you're with new audiences quite regularly, but then you're posting, I'm assuming, some of your best
of jokes.
stuff.
Yeah.
So how do you, like, if you have some classics, how often do you bring them up? Do you do them regularly, or do you? Once you do something, do you bury it for a season? You know what I'm saying?
The way you structure a show. So when I'm doing a show, when I'm trying new material, you don't want to try like 3 new jokes in a row. All right. You got to have like something, works. And so I'll do like almost every other of like, here's something you get. The most important thing you got to have is a great opener and a great closer.
Right.
Right. And so it doesn't matter. Like, the middle's going to have some dips and valleys. You're going to figure this stuff out. When the ideal is when you get to recording a special, you've got a full straight line across, all A+, killing it. Right. When you're writing new jokes, that's just unrealistic. You can't do that every time. You know, you're writing a joke and you really are having to figure out with everybody if this is funny to everyone else. Right. And so what you'll do is you got your great opener, get a good laugh early. And then that next bit, try something new, And then if that flops, you've got a good bit that follows it that is going to get them right back. And so, And you just do that back and forth until the end. And then eventually the goal is that all of your bits are killing. Then you film that and you're like, all right, you have to in your head mark it as done. And then you start over and you have to find a new opener. Go, great, my opener works. Then you got to find a new closer. My closer works. Now you've got this structure. Now you just start filling in the middle. And so I'm in the middle of that process right now. I just had a special come out.
Okay. So you'll have some, how many openers do you have right now?
Like opening jokes?
Yeah, that really are killers.
I've probably got 10 different jokes that I know will crush.
Okay.
Like kind of, because your opener's got to be short. You can't do a 10-minute story. That's a closer. That's a closing bit.
Right.
You know?
So give us one.
Oh man. Well, right now I've been opening with, usually because I travel a lot, I try to open with some local stuff. I do a lot of small towns, do a lot of small churches. So I just told you I'm in Holt, Missouri, you know, I'm doing their Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah.
It's up by Kearney. Kearney is the big town for them. So my opener there will be, and I was just talking to my manager. I was in Los Angeles last week and, you know, she was like, where do you want to go next? You know, Chicago, Miami. And I said, no. Holt, Missouri, you know? And so I'll do that. That'll get them. And I'll usually try to find something in the town. I was in Alabama and there was a guy on the street corner. Every small town has like a guy that they just assume that you're going to act like that's normal. You know, there's a guy in, I don't even remember which town it was in Alabama, but he's a Michael Jackson impersonator, very poor impersonator, but he's just at this gas station corner, you know, doing very bad dance moves in a full Michael Jackson get up, you know, and we drove by and no one in the car said anything about it. And I was like, do we all see the guy? And they were like, oh yeah, he's there every day. And they're always just like, oh yeah, that's our Michael Jackson guy. And so I'll do the joke of like, you know, Holt, Missouri, and I'll make fun of the stage or something. I'll go, if they don't have, you know, black paper wrapped around the walls, and a Michael Jackson impersonator, I'm not showing up. And that, and then that crushes. And then we're, you know, cause then it shows that I gave a crap about your town, you know, I paid attention to where I was.
Right.
And then I'll go into a joke that's like, one of my opening bits right now is talking about how my fiance, I'll say I'm engaged and everyone goes, oh, you know, and I'll say, yeah, you can't break up with a girl who listens to true crime podcasts, you know, because she knows too much. And I'll go into my whole bit about how she listens to true crime podcasts.
Oh, that's good.
And so I launch into a bit and then I'll try something new after that. I'm working on some ghost stuff right now. You brought up aliens. I don't know if you believe in ghosts, but I'm working on some, cause I'm getting ready to get into Halloween. So I'm doing some Halloween jokes and, you know, trying to structure, I'm doing a whole Halloween tour in Utah. So I'm trying to write some new bits.
Speaking of ghosts, great.
We're in your basement. Let's chill for a second. He's like, speaking of ghosts, this whole place, dude. Yeah. Speaking of ghosts, I'm like, all right, I'm looking.
We were doing, when I was pastoring Vineyard, we had multiple campuses. Well, one of the campuses was at what was called the old Oddfellows home in Liberty.
Okay.
It was over 100-year-old home and then a children's home.
Yeah.
And it's a vineyard, you know, place now.
Sure.
And so, but it's known to be haunted.
I know, yeah.
And there's this show called Ghost Hunters.
They came out there?
Yeah, they have
to your church.
To that.
And it was
renting that space.
But it was we were
doing our venue in this church. But when
Zach Baggins is just out there underneath the stage looking around like.
When we first went there, I was like, so do you guys bring exorcists in here every now and then? And this is the owner of the place. And he goes, well, as a matter of fact, we do.
Oh my gosh.
And he's like, so there's a Catholic exorcist that travels with the Ghost Hunter crew that actually goes in and I don't, you know, so I just
does whatever.
Yeah. And I was just so fascinated.
Yeah. I just have an essential oils mom going. It's the same thing. It's all made up, you know?
Yeah. Well, crystals.
Well, I went out to University of St. Mary in Leavenworth.
Okay.
I don't know if you've ever been out there.
Been out there. Yeah.
Yeah. It's haunted for sure.
Yeah.
All right. And I know it's haunted because that's the first thing the guy said to me. I walked in and he goes, hey, you know, I'm looking around the building. He goes, it's not haunted. And I was like, nah, I didn't ask. You know, if you're offering that it's not haunted, probably is. But there's pictures of nuns all over the wall, you know, because it's been there for, I don't know, however, hundreds of years, whatever, in St. Mary. But there's a poem on the wall at St. Mary. And this is not a joke. This is the part where I was like, yeah, this place is haunted. Poem on the wall. The title of the poem is "The Walls at St. Mary Breathe."
There you go.
That was the title of the poem. And it was about how it breathes with the history of the school and all this stuff. But I was like, yeah, but it breathes, you know, with the lungs of ghosts.
Yeah, when you go to these cathedrals over in Europe, you know, and they bury all the dudes under the floor of the church.
And you're just like,
of course, there's
love this, love this. This is good. No, but you know, so that's the thing is, I'm, you know, right now I'm trying to write a whole new bit about my neighbor believing in ghosts, and so it's not. Right now I have like a skeleton of the bit. That's funny that I said skeleton, but I mean, like I've got like that's how you have like your bones of it, and then you just got to add the flesh and make it a full. Yeah, it's like a little baby.
Yeah, fun stuff. So let's just give folks how are they gonna find out?
Oh,
how
yeah,
are they
yeah.
gonna watch? How do they connect?
Easiest way, if you can't remember how to spell my name, easiest way is just to Google Chick-fil-A rap. Like I said, it's gonna be the first thing that pops up. But yeah, JaronMyers.com has a link to all my comedy specials, and at Jaron Myers on Instagram, TikTok, all that fun stuff. I post pretty regularly.
How often do you do a show in Kansas City or in the Kansas City surroundings?
Probably like once a quarter. I'd say once you know, every couple months I'll do a show. It's hard to do. It's really hard to get people out to local shows, you know, because it's much easier. If I'm doing a show in Denver, it's like, this guy came all the way from Kansas City, you know? Right. And if I do a show here, it's like, he came from the Northland, you know? And it's like, all right. But, yeah, so we do a podcast called Things I Learned Last Night. I say it so fast. Sorry. Tillin. Tillin. Yeah. My best friend teaches me something every week. And so obviously if you're listening to this or watching this, you're a podcast listener. So maybe you'd enjoy that. Yeah. But we're getting ready to do monthly live shows here in Kansas City for our podcast. Oh, sweet. And so that'll be a way to come hang out. And where
are you going to do that at?
The Barrel of the Bottoms is where the plan is right now. It's in the West Bottoms. Okay. It's a comedy venue, very small. It's honestly about the size of this basement room down here. And so they got a little stage in the corner. You can fit maybe 25, 30 people in there. Oh, interesting. That's so it's very, fun, though. Yeah, it's going to be a blast. Yeah. And so our last live show, we sold it out at the Rhino and had people driving 8 hours to come to this thing. Sweet. So yeah, we just have a lot of fun. Good deal. And I'm having a blast. Good stuff. Well, thanks. I love your sense of humor. I've gone through a whole lot of your stuff that you have posted up on YouTube, and man, I enjoy it. I do think laughter is healing. The right times in the right place. And even sometimes we laugh and we cry at the same time, and it can be so healing for people. And I think sometimes just giving people a space to see themselves from a humorous angle. They've never viewed it that way before. All of a sudden they're laughing at themselves, they're laughing at their friend, their neighbor, their spouse, their kid. I'd also say that laughter is a little bit of a barometer for where you're at and your, you know, mental or spiritual health or whatever. Is that, man, the times that I'm taking myself the most serious and I'm just not able to let go and laugh. I almost like, have you ever gotten to a point in your life where you're just like angry at other people's joy? And you just realize like, oh, that's jealousy. Like I'm seeing them experience a lot of joy and I'm just not having a lot of it. And that's really, your joy is actually making me pretty angry, you know? And so, but it's a really good barometer of, if I haven't like belly laughed in a minute, maybe I need to take a second and kind of like look at what's going on. Yeah. You know? Cause I started looking for fun, and I've been, trying to pay more attention to joy and opportunities for fun around me. And it's there all the time. It is. And so if you're not experiencing it, that's a you problem. It is. To be honest. Yeah. I'll tell you something just real quick. Sure. Is that, like, you know, I've been in the recovery world for about 3 years now. Yeah. And there was a time at that dark place 3 years ago or so when it was hard to laugh. Yeah. Right. But I got in these recovery circles, and there's these folks that have, some of the craziest folks have been doing the work planet, for a long time, but they've been doing the work for the planet, and they're so honest, and vulnerable, that
genuine.
They're leaking.
There's genuine comedy that
Yes.
like there were times when I go, oh, I wish I could record this and post it. Because they're just being them.
Well, because
it's like
laughing is inherently vulnerable. You're not going to let anybody see you snort laugh if you're very concerned with how they see you, you know? And that and that's why I love doing what I'm doing, is whether it's at a church or a comedy club, the whole point is that we're laughing and it brings us together. And the people who do the introspective work, the people who really dive into the really difficult things, some people want to think that joy and fun are surface level, you know? And sure, there can be some avoidance, you know, but true joy is at the, through the bottom of the depths.
Yeah. There's a line in the big book of AA. It says, we are not a glum lot.
Yeah.
And it's because you jump into these halls where people have found some healing and sobriety and all that, and they've gone through some of the deepest, darkest things, but they come out with laughter.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they can laugh themselves, and they can, and it's something that kind of surprises people, because people will come in at their very bottom. Yeah. Right.
They're coming into a place where they can't laugh.
They can't laugh.
Yep.
And they see other people around them laugh. Like you don't expect to go into one of these places and see people laughing. Yeah. And they are.
And that's the hope of what I hope that my friend group can be for people who show up in our friend group. Yeah. That I hope that our Christian community can be, that I would love our churches to be. Right. Is, man, there's such vulnerability and depth here that there is just an inherent joy.
It is. It works.
Yeah. And if that's not there, that's what I'm saying. It's a good barometer of health.
Yeah, I agree. Well, great stuff, Jaron. Thank you so much for joining us on Spirituality Adventures.
I don't have a choice. It's in his basement. Right. I'm locked here.
Right, with the ghosts. So anyway.
The ghosts
for joining us.
Guests past.
Yes. Right. 2 years, 100 interviews right now.
There you go.
Sitting at that. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time. This concludes today's episode. Thanks for tuning in and listening. Remember, if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Remember to like, share, or subscribe to the social media platform that you're using. And then go to our website, spiritualityadventures.com, and make a one-time donation, or you can subscribe monthly and receive our special bonus content. Thanks so much.